can go ahead.
Bonjour à tous. Je vais démarrer.
Good morning, everyone. I will begin. Welcome to this webinar on the theme of agri-resilience tools in the Caribbean. Before we get started, as Nicalia said, this webinar is available to you in English and in French. You can click icon in the form of a globe, and there you can choose your preferred language, English or French. There will be 2 presentations today, and I will share with you right away my screen. As you can see, we have the agenda so that you can follow along with me. So today, we will first have opening remarks from Mr. Jérôme Roque from ADEM Guadeloupe, followed by Nicalia Grégoire-Carré, who's based in Dominica, working with IICA. Then we'll go into a presentation on climate smart irrigation technologies by Mr. Laurenzo Tirtopawiro, followed by question and answer session. Then we will have another presentation on the use of vetiver as a plant engineering tool and nature-based adaptation solution by Mr. Kent Coipel, IICA Dominica, and Mr. Greg Thomas of ADEM. Without further ado, let me hand over to Mr. Jérôme Roque, Regional Director of ADEM in Guadeloupe. Good day, everyone. I am very pleased to be part of this webinar today. I know that there are a lot of people online this morning, and that really warms my heart. It's our very first webinar of this type in the context of an agreement between ADEM and IICA. This was signed at the end of 2020, and this is the first public intervention that we are hosting. So we are happy and proud. So just to give you some context, ADEM, for those of you who are not aware, is the French government agency for the environment and energy management. We have the mandate for energy transition, and we exist in the French overseas departments. We are based here in Guadeloupe. I am based in Guadeloupe, but we're also in Saint Martin, Saint Bart's. But there are 2 other ADEM agency offices in the Caribbean, in Martinique, and we have also our colleagues located in French Guyana. So what do we do at ADEM? We provide guidance, financial support, technical support to companies and the territorial collectivities, the local governance agencies, with regard to ecology. We have 3 main pillars. First pillar is better management of waste management and circular economy. Second pillar is that of developing energy transition in the territories where we're located. That is to say, we promote energy management, energy consumption, and also development of renewable energy solutions. Third pillar is the fight against climate change, and we are working towards climate adaptation. So in this context, you would better understand why we have signed this agreement with IICA at the end of 2020. In the French West Indies, we wanted to be able to have formal exchanges with the countries that surround us in the Caribbean, because we share geographic realities. We have very much common challenges that we're faced with, and we in the Caribbean are really on the front lines of the climate crisis. We're faced with the same challenges, the same risks, the same concerns. Last weekend, you may have been seeing images of flooding in St. Lucia. We had the same situation here in Guadeloupe as well. So we really share very same common realities. We also have very similar economies, tourism and agriculture-based economies, like most of our neighboring Caribbean islands. And so we, like many of the Caribbean islands, import a lot of our agricultural products to support the tourism industry. And this has a huge impact on our local agricultural sector. So for this reason, we are very happy to sign this agreement. And I just want to greet in a specific, particular way my colleague, Mr. Greg Rollins from IICA. We really wanted to have this strategic agreement with IICA. And coming out of this, we are hoping for greater development of our capacities, capacity building between our agencies and in the region. We also wanted to share the knowledge that we've gained, and that's what we're doing today, sharing the knowledge that we've gained from our fieldwork. And also we are looking at initiating projects together, climate adaptation projects together. So on that note, allow me to express my heartfelt thanks to all of you participants for joining us today, our speakers, our presenters who will be sharing the knowledge today, Nikelia, Marianne. Thank you to my team at ADEM here in Guadeloupe. I wish you all an excellent seminar today. Thank you, Jérôme. Without further ado, I will hand over to Nikelia, who will introduce the seminar.
Thank you very much, Mariana. And of course, it is a great pleasure for us to have the sharing between the English and the French territories in the region. And so persons would know we have persons from all the way up Belize, the Bahamas, we have Guadeloupe, the French territories, Guadeloupe, Martinique. And so this is really exciting for us. So IICA stands for the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, and IICA is a specialized agency for agriculture of the Inter-American system, and we support the efforts of the 34 member states, both in Latin America and the English-speaking Caribbean states, including also Haiti and the Dominican Republic. So we have 34 member states, and we help them in achieving the agricultural development and rural well-being. And one of the key things, in achieving that is we need collaboration, we need sharing of information, and, transfer of technologies and the such. And therefore, we have, through the Climate Action and Sustainability Program, we have this Caribbean Agriculture Forum that we will be doing today. So it's for short, is the CCRAF, Caribbean Climate Responsive Agriculture Forum. And the key objectives for us, as I indicated earlier, we want to raise awareness and share knowledge of climate smart, everything now. We could see the impacts of the climate changes on us, the floodings, the landslides. And so we want to share knowledge on those climate smart agricultural practices across the region. We also want to build a community of interested and engaged actors, because to achieve, the goals, the climate goals, and to even improve our livelihoods and make us more resilient to these climatic changes, we need to work together. We need to work as a community. Even if, somebody might be in Guadeloupe, somebody in Dominica, at the end of the day, we still need to work as a community because it's impacting all of us. And we want to also promote and enhance coordination and continued collaboration among the stakeholders. And that is, very interesting. And I'm very happy for this collaboration with the French territory. But more important to us is now translating, linking that technical knowledge to action on the ground, because we could stay there and we can talk a lot, but we need to have that action on the ground. So these are the key objectives of this forum. and it is great pleasure to have you here today. And so we will begin first presentation with Laurenzo, who will speak to us on water, on irrigation, and climate smart technologies. But before I go there, in case persons are having difficulties with the interpretation, so below your screen, you will see this globe. Select it and select either English or French. So Laurenzo, I pass the floor to you. And while you present, I will be sharing a poll that for the participants to answer while you prepare to share your slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Nakilia. So whenever everybody hearing me well, good morning to everyone. Laurenzo from Suriname here.
Good morning, loud and clear. And just before you start, Laurenzo, we will take questions from the audience after his presentation, and also feel free to put your questions in the chat.
All right, so I could start? Okay.
Yes, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, as Nikilia mentioned, my name is Laurenzo and I'm based in Suriname. It's a pleasure for me to share IICA's work that is being conducted in relation to climate smart technology. And for this presentation, today layout will be on a project that we have implemented recently. We will have the project summary, objective, and the specific objectives. The deliverables under the project and achievements, the summary farmers experience, and the positive agroecological practices and benefits. In the picture, you see there on the right side, the beneficiary, the group that we work with under this project. The group name is Duurzame Ontwikkeling Weg naar Zee. It is a group that is on the coast of Suriname, and it is one of the main vegetable producing community, farmers community of Suriname. As mentioned, I'll talk a little bit about the project summary. The project title was Farmers' Vulnerability to Climate Change Impacts Through the Promotion of Climate Smart Agriculture Technology in Suriname. It had a budget amount of approximately 266,000 with the implementation duration of 18 months. It was an initiative on the GCCA Plus Suriname Adaptation Project and funded by the European Union in collaboration with UNDP Suriname. The overall objective of this project was to strengthen the resilience of the agriculture sector to the negative impacts of climate change through the promotion and use of climate smart agriculture technologies. For the specific objective was to reduce farmer vulnerability to climate change impacts through the building of knowledge and skills in the use of management of protected agriculture structures, micro irrigation, rainwater harvesting system for sustainable commercial vegetable production. On our main activity, we use a framework called TDI, where we train farmers, demonstrate and implement. As mentioned, the area we work in was Weg naar Zee. That literally means the road to the sea. In our case, it was the Atlantic Ocean. And this area is located on the northwest of the capital, Paramaribo. As mentioned before, it's one of the main vegetable producing areas of Suriname, with a population of approximately 16,000, according to a census held in 2012. The pictures shows us the demonstration units installed. We had the protected agriculture structures, the micro irrigation system, water reservoir lined with HDPE pond liner to protect contamination of saltwater intrusions. And on the three other pictures, as mentioned, we have trainings 4 farmers conducted training, 4 farmers, in-house training, as well as practical field trainings, where you see our very own Dr. Jenny guiding the farmers in the field. In regards to the design that we have established, we did 2 double ridge protected agriculture structure with a dimension of 45 meters by 9 by 7.5 meters. Compared to the design that we have in Suriname, it is a very tall protected agriculture structure based to exactly increase the air circulation within the protected agriculture structure. We know that Suriname has a high humidity factor and high temperature, hence the design that we have chosen for this region. The other components within the protected agriculture structure is the covering of the total covering of the sidewalls with anti-insect netting to keep out pests and diseases, and to improve or to better manage the humidity factors, temperature factors. We also had a misting systems completed together with 2 circulating fan and 4 suction fan to help the management of temperature and humidity within the protected agriculture structure. For a well development of the plants, we had used hydroponic production system, soilless culture. I want to highlight this, that we used a local base mixed substrate mixture of river sand and rice chaff in a ratio of 20% river sand and 80% river sand. This because it is widely locally available, it is being discarded and even burned in Suriname. And on the side of this protected agriculture structure, we had a guttering system installed to capture all the rain, and this rain is distributed through a piping towards the water reservoir that has a capacity of 480 cubic meters. The whole system is powered with a 60 kilowatt solar power system, which all the extra energy that is being produced or sent to the local energy company, which they have an agreement with the farmers that every extra energy that is being sent back to the local energy company is being deducted from his monthly household bill. Further, we had 2 micro irrigation systems installed for a farmer that produce leafy vegetables on an area of 4,000 square meters. There we had micro overhead sprinkler irrigation systems installed. These systems, if you compare to the traditionally irrigation systems used in Suriname, we have the impact sprinklers that have quite large water droplets, which require more energy from the pump, which increases cost of production. This micro overhead sprinklers, compared to the impact sprinkler, require less water pressure, which is benefit for the farmer in regards to cost of production. Sorry. In regards of the drip tube irrigation system, we installed at an area plot of 2,000 square meters for a farmer that deals with fruit vegetables. In this case, it was tomato and sweet pepper. And both systems was completely designed to be used for fertile irrigation system. We had the fertilizers injector installed that allows the farmers to calculate precision doses for each growing stage. It also minimized nutrition loss by runoffs. So all these little tweaks that we have put in place for the farmers is directly, you could have seen the efficiency when it comes to the cost of production. I just want to highlight certain components that we have used during the installation of micro irrigation systems, whether it was for the overhead sprinklers or the drip tube system. The important components in this is the type of filters used. You know, if you don't have good filters, then your irrigation system will not flow. The main problem that most of the farmers have is the maintenance of the filters. When is needed and what to do when you see pressure being lost. So during the training, topics has been highlighted on the area of maintenance, also maintenance of the whole system. In this regard, the filters, when you see like pressure dropping to 6 to 8 C between the inlet and outlet, you definitely have to start cleaning your filters. In regards of the fertilizer injectors, there's a diagram how it's functioned. It works to a piston system. It doesn't require extra energy. It uses the same water flow from the pump, and you know it is a very efficient system when it comes to the calculation of doses for each growing stage of your plant. There are other systems that are being used in Suriname. For instance, the Venturi works quite well, but in regards of the precision to distribute the right amount of calculated nutrition for the plant per growing stage, it might differ each day as long as the pressure of the pump fluctuates. In the picture here, you have an image of the installation that was done for the protected agriculture structure. We had two injectors installed, each for the protected structure. There were two installed. You see the stock tank where the high concentration of fertilizers are being put in based on the ratio of the fertilizer injectors. In regards of the rainwater harvesting reservoir, I want to stress out that depending on the type of soil, you would need to calculate the slope or the angles for the slope. For instance, we have sandy soil and 45-degree slope work well for us. And we installed 3 water harvesting reservoir of 20 by 12 by 2 meters and lined with a pond HDPE pond liner to protect it from saltwater intrusion, contamination with saltwater intrusion. On the other photo beneath, on the right side, we see how the binding has been done. The binding of the HDPE pond liner is being done on the trench dimension of 60 by 30 centimeters. And when you dig the trench, you put in the pond liner and you cover it with the soil. There are different types of pond liner that you could purchase. You could ask the supplier to deliver a one-piece HDPE pond liner canvas based on the size of your water reservoir. The important thing to know is that when you install this HDPE pond liner, you do it during the dry season, because when the soil is wet, it might get stuck on the surface of it, and it would be hard to pull, and it could even tear your pond liner. The other type that we had was HDPE sheets. Those mostly are being used on bigger sizes of water reservoir that you could weld on site. Luckily for us, we had the opportunity to also weld the sheets together as a training for the farmers and the suppliers in Suriname. And in the end, it should look something like the picture on the right side. No? Here we had a 20 by 12 by 2 meter line pond line. In regards to the drip irrigation system, we had the drip tip and we had aero drippers emitters with a flow rate of 8 liters per hour. For the drip tip, we use a 2 liter flow rate, and I'm not making any effort. I'm not doing any advertising for Toro, but this is that when you purchase, you have the technical specification for the items you're going to install. So you could calculate all the necessary joints for such an irrigation systems. These are some videos in regards to the micro overhead sprinkler installed in the field. You could see that the droplets, if you're familiar with impact sprinklers, that the droplets of the impact sprinklers will be slightly larger. The specifications for this, there's a different type of micro irrigation sprinklers. The diameters might be different. They have different coloring of these types of overhead sprinklers that speaks to certain working diameters. And in the middle, you see a video of a misting system installed, not just only to cool off or control temperatures, humidity, but we also use it for in crop nurseries. And on the right side, this video you see there a project that we did with Solanum stramofolium that's locally known in Suriname as the bolomaka. It's a wild variety of eggplant that grows mostly in waterlogged areas and has great capacity when it comes to combating soil-borne diseases. On this wild eggplant variety, we graft tomato that tomatoes for tomatoes that are being sold locally. As mentioned before, the importance of filters and clean water guarantees the good functioning of emitters, micro sprinklers, and injectors. Some of the achievements under this project was the training of 121 farmers, 22 agriculture extension officers, 21 students of the Anton de University in open field micro irrigation and crop management under protected agriculture structure. We had one knowledge exchange visit where farmers and technical officers had a chance to visit the Center of Research and Integral Service in Protected Agriculture, CRISIA, that is in Santa Anita, Jalisco, Mexico. And one video has been produced on climate change and climate smart technology, where you could, and it's broadcast to the YouTube link also mentioned there. The farmers' experience in regards of quality and harvesting time, we had on the protected agriculture, the farmers mentioned that they only could have harvest the whole year round, and in open field condition, they saw the difference that they could only harvest till 3 months after planting. In regards to weekly fruit set per plant, under the protected agriculture structure, it was higher, and under open field condition, it was lower. Quality of fruit on the protected agriculture structure, they didn't see any sunburn, and in open field, sunburn were presented. Fertilized, says the plant react faster on the protected agriculture structure. In open field condition, the plants react slower. Washing harvest fruit, it wasn't necessary on the protected agriculture structure. And open field, it was necessary or required. You had more yield or higher yield per plant on the protected agriculture structure compared to open field, it was lower. And the taste of the fruit, in this case, it was the paprika, it was sweeter compared to the open field conditions, which was slightly bitter. The positive agroecological practices and benefits of this project was by using rice chaff as growth substrate and river sand, it substitutes traditional practices of burning of rice chaff, which cause CO2 emission, which is one of the gases that adds to the green gas, the effects of green gas, no, and the climate change. Growth substrate can be reused for open soil amendments for amelioration upon replacement, using rain water harvesting system that is good quality for irrigation, reduce water consumption through micro irrigation up to between 85 to 100% efficiency versus average rate of 60% with other methods used, and reduce post-harvesting cleaning, reduce use of pesticide, weedicide to soilless culture and protected cultivation environment, more efficient use of fertilizers through hydroponic system, which reduce leaching of agrochemicals into soil and groundwater sources, reservoirs with protective lining protect stored irrigation water from contamination by saltwater intrusion, reduce crop losses due to reduced incidence of weed, ground cover, reduce incidence of pests and disease through a fully enclosed structures with anti-insect netting, reduce impacts of environment factor due to controlled environment, looking at sunburn and flooding, for instance, in an area, nutrition and moisture deficiency disorder, and chemical injury. I think with this, it was my last slide, and I look forward for any questions in regards of this project implemented in Suriname. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laurenzo. And we have seen quite a number of, irrigation methods used under this project, but not only, irrigation technology. We also looked at protective agriculture, incorporating fertilization there. So as you can see, it's not doing one thing on its own. There is required a combination, even if the focus is on, irrigation technology, water smart irrigation technology. So I will send in a feedback poll while we take some questions. We already have a question in the chat. So Laurenzo, someone is asking, how do you protect mosquitoes in rainwater reservoirs? Or protect against?
So that is a good question. Actually, we haven't used any method in regards of the mosquitoes that could cause, for instance, the dengue problem. No? So that we didn't take into consideration when we implemented this project.
But from your experience with it, any things you would suggest to help mitigate against breeding of mosquitoes in there? Nothing that has been tried. Okay. So we may have to look into that and get back to you, Teresa. I know persons are wondering if they will get the PowerPoints and the recordings. Yes, we will provide those after the session. If persons have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat, or you can simply raise your hand and ask the question. This forum is for you, so this is an opportunity. Share your experience, even if you don't have a question. We are here to share with each other. Do we have any questions from the chat? You can just open your mic and ask any question that you would like. Yes, Frank.
Oui, bonjour à tous.
Alors, je crois que nous avons une main levée de
Petite
Franck,
question sur
voilà,
le l'objectif et le public ciblé par cette installation, c'est de la recherche, de l'expérimentation. Et petite question
Who are you
peut-être
targeting
indiscrète, quel est
exactly?
le coût de
And
cette
perhaps another
installation?
question, what would be the cost of such an
Merci.
installation? Thank you.
You got the English part of that, Lorenzo?
Lorenzo, vous avez entendu la question en anglais?
No, I just heard the last part. What would be the cost of such installation? Am I correct?
The question was, what would be the target audience for such an installation and the cost?
All right. So the target audience for this project was working with the farmers community that was identified during the project, and for also working direct with extension officers of the government, the agriculture extension officer from the government, and students from the university and the Polytechnical College in Suriname. For the irrigation systems installed on 4,000 square meter plot, we had a costing of, at that time, a costing of around 20,000. That was just only on materials, and for the drip tube irrigation system, it was about 15,000 US. In regards to the protected agriculture structure, it was somewhere around 150,000 plus. You know, these systems are not available back then in Suriname. After this project came about, suppliers in Suriname started to, you know, get more involved and getting more of these components into Suriname. So this project also helped these suppliers to see how they could shift from the traditional way of farming to using more smart agriculture, smart technologies at this time. Hope I answered that question.
Thanks, Lorenzo. Frank had a question again, and then we'll take some questions from the chat.
No, thank you. That's okay for me. This is Frank here.
Okay, so from the chat, Lorenzo, someone is asking about the maca plant. What is its name again, and what are the benefits?
Okay, in regards of the first question, in regards of the first question, yes, Leon, should I? Right. So, go ahead, Leon.
We could not hear you, Leon. We could not hear anything from him, Lorenzo. If you want to, we could probably skip to another question for now, and he probably could type the response in the chat and I'll read it out. The other question we have, Lorenzo, which is the best in the two for irrigation for smart climate technologies? Is it the sprinklers or the drip?
For me, it depends really on the farmer's budget, no? But for micro overhead sprinklers, you normally use for leafy vegetables, because when you plant fruit vegetables, those type of plants doesn't really like it when they get all wet, no? And it also causes problems when it comes to fungus growth, and it create a better environment for fungus to grow when the whole plant is being wet. So, and compared to the drip irrigation system, you could use it for both productions, no, for vegetables and leafy vegetables and fruit vegetables. But the difference is that when you use drip irrigation systems, your filtering system and your quality of water should be on top. If not, you'll have a lot of problems in the field of clogging of these emitters. I saw questions about water evaporation from the pond during the dry season. How is that measured? Okay, during the project, we had issues with the dry season and the high temperature and high evapotranspiration of that water. We were looking to cover the pond itself with a shade cloth using duckweed as a way to mitigate this problem.
Yes, that's it for that question, Laurenzo. I think persons indicated that they were here in Leon. So Leon, if you want to go ahead.
I could see Leon, but I think his mic is muted. Yeah, Leon, go ahead.
Sensitive enough to provide only that to an individual plant, for instance, and so that you don't you have intensive care over a specific plant or specific type of plant caliber. Have we reached that yet? Is this system capable of doing?
Yeah, what you are referring to is the image of a fertilizer injector. You could,
yeah,
that injector, you could, set the rate of the mixture between your strong concentration of fertilizers combined with the flow of water. For instance, if you set your fertilizer injector 1 to 50, means that it pulls out 1 liter from your strong concentration of fertilizer mixed with 50 parts of water. So there's a formulation how to calculate your strong concentration based on the rate you set your fertilizer injector. So, and for each plant growing stage, each plant is different. You have to calculate, for instance, for tomato and for lettuce, the ratio of nutrition optics of the plants would be different. So your strong concentration should be calculated based on your plant and the ratio set of your fertilizer injector. I don't know if I answered your question, Leon. Leon, you're on mute, Leon.
Try unmuting your mic, Leon.
Did that first, okay. So I was thinking, you know, when the gentleman was just talking, I was just thinking, I wondered what I was seeing because I saw so much potential in that what I was seeing. So I was just trying to find out what of the potential I saw it to have were actually being utilized, were actually being reached. So that's why I was asking those questions, because if it can do a concentration, if it can calibrate a concentration, and it should also be able to calibrate volumerically too, and whether that has reached a place where it can actually turn off after a certain volume is supplied. Otherwise, the likelihood exists that it could overtreat a plant. It could dose a plant. And that's why I asked this question.
Okay, thanks, Leon. You wanted to add anything there, Laurenzo?
No.
Oh, are we good? Okay, thank you, Leon.
Nekelia?
Yes.
Nous avons une question dans le chat de Charlie.
We have a question in the chat from Charlie. It's in English.
And what are the benefits for you, Laurenzo?
Yes, we were taking that question earlier.
Because she said she didn't have an answer to it, so that's why. So probably Laurenzo,
yes,
can
we
you
needed
get
to
the
go
answer?
back to that question there, Laurenzo. The name of the maca plant and its benefits.
Oh,
yeah.
The bolo maca, the scientific name is Solanum stramifolium. It is used as a rootstock because it is very resistant to soil-borne diseases, and it grows well in waterlogged areas. So, for instance, if you have just an unusual rainfall, and you know your field becomes very drastic, then you know the plant could really survive up to a certain day. Whenever you graft your tomato on it. So it was basically to combat soil-borne diseases and drastic fields, just in case you have a poor drainage systems, no?
Okay, thank you, Laurenzo. Mariana, we have a French question in the chat from Judson.
Voilà, c'est ça. On a une question sur la réplication.
Yes, we have a question in French regard to duplicating this project in other countries.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
You need it in English?
So the question has to do with rolling out this project in other countries.
In other countries, if it's if there is plan about this.
I think Nekelia could answer that question better than I, but we in Suriname, as the technical officers, we are ready to go to other to implement these projects, similar projects in other countries, and share our experience we have in the field when it comes to micro irrigation systems, installing micro irrigation systems on the similar conditions as Suriname.
Okay, I will just chime in a bit there. So with a lot of the projects, so this project was one that was implemented in Suriname, and one of the key things that we look to do with a lot of this project is to scale them up in the country. That means, you know, having them being implemented in different parts of the country, but also scaling them out to other countries. But to normally do that, we would need now the governments to acknowledge and want to do those things. And also that would require the funding as well. A lot of the times the project writing comes in, we have to do the project proposals and get the fundings. But yes, these projects can be extending out of the countries, but we would need now to get the interest of the countries and to the finances to implement those. But as we do it in IICA, and one of the key things with this forum is to now share the experiences that we have had with these projects, the lessons that we have learned, and how useful it can be for some of the other countries. And of course, it would have to be the interest of the countries to want to invest and take up these initiatives. Greg, I'm not sure if you want to add anything further there on the ECS level.
I think you have covered it very well.
Great, thanks, Greg. So we have Lavon, your hand has been up for a little while, we'll take you.
Yes, good morning. Lawrence answered one part of my question with regards to water evaporation in the pond, but he said they use duckweed, but you didn't answer if the duckweed worked in helping keep the evaporation of the water surface down. Could any other plant like hyacinth be used as well?
So we've tried duckweed. That's because we have that here in Suriname. No? I haven't tried other things as yet, but the one of the problem that comes with duckweed is the settlement of this organic matter on the bottom of the water reservoir, which could be an issue for this filtering system that we had placed there. So in that sense, when you use organic covering, then a next set of filters would be required. In this case, we should work with a cyclone filter and then a sand filter, and then we have the disc filters that I have shown during the presentation. So, you know, it works, but then you have to invest in other components as well.
Oh yes, more expense. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Lavon. We have just 2 more questions, Lorenzo, that was in the chat. Someone is just acknowledging, thank you for the good work. And they want to know, what are the economic benefits, the return on investments, number of years for the farmers, and how do consumers react to sweeter taste of the products?
So first of all, in Suriname, I don't know if it's culture-wise, but Surinamese like sweet things. No? So that was a very good. The response of the crowd and the customers, especially children, when they tasted the paprika, they had the bitter taste that they are accustomed of, no? And they were very happy about the taste actually. In regards of the return investment, there's still what we need to work on actually, because since this was a demonstration site, we didn't include this the return investment into the project. So I think this is something that we have to look at in the next project that we are trying to get on board.
Okay, so I'll just read one last question, and we have some comments from Carlos in the thing, and then we will move on to the other presentation. So the last question for you, Lorenzo, what do you think is the utilization of sensors to measure environmental or weather properties? And could you imagine those parameters being integrated to an innovative irrigation system?
Well, of course, sensors is the next level, no, for the agriculture sector in Suriname. Since this was a teaching, then we had analog systems, so that they get, you know, the grip on how the systems are working. They could do the control mechanism manually, but the systems actually is designed to add sensors into it, but you know, adding sensors would require other type of screenings, and the cost eventually would also be slightly higher than what we originally designed for. But census is the next thing we want to work with the farmers.
Okay, thank you very much, Laurenzo. I will just read a comment from Carlos, and Carlos is saying that he is from Belize, and they have over 650 covered structures, and in his village, an area of over 220 acres, I would want to believe. However, the biggest problem with covered structures is that the farmers sometimes do not have good biosecurity and contaminate the structure. They usually use same soil inside and not compost. They come in and bring external organism. Also, one contaminated, you have to use pesticides. And as such, this is dangerous for the environment. And cover structures are used for high value cash crops there. And the return is the value of the investment in 1 year. So he's saying that a $40,000 investment can be generated back in 1 year. And if you are a certified organic farmer, it has a higher value. So they are seeing some key economic benefits of the covered structure, but there is some need for biosecurity in the structures there. And also what he's saying is that the water catchment can also be enclosed using the same liner of higher caliber. And examples of that has been used in Salvador and using a pump to deliver it. And so I guess covering it could probably also help with the mosquito issue. So thank you very much, Laurenzo, and thank you everyone for your questions. And so we will have next our presentation on the use of vetiver as an ecosystem-based adaptation and green engineering solution. And so I pass the floor to you, Kent. So before we go into Kent, I will be sending out another poll for you to answer. Thank you very much. And while we're waiting on Mr. Coipel to go into full screen, Laurenzo okay, I saw that Laurenzo has put in the full scientific name of the maca plant in the chat for those who have been interested in that. So you can go into full screen, Mr. Coipel.
Right, just be sure that I am in full screen.
Not yet. At the bottom.
Okay, good. Good morning. Can you hear me, Michaela?
Loud and clear, you can go ahead.
I know some of us are also joining from beyond our timeline, so good afternoon to those. Let me just join by indicating how I'm happy to be part of this conversation and to really collaborate with Adam. Dominica is well situated between two French territories on the North Guadeloupe and on the South Martinique. So we feel like we're very close with the French territories. So we're happy to know that the relationship between IICA and ADEM is formally linked, and we can share our technical services as well as discussion. I'm happy also to be able to share our experience. And as you're aware, or some of you may be aware, that Dominica, together with 4 other territories within the region, are implementing a CBF, which is the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund Eco-Based Adaptation Project, or vetiver project for short. And in Dominica, we are utilizing vetiver as a green engineering tool, more in terms of land stabilization to reduce erosion on slopes. As you can see, the first slide that we have there, you could see the use of vetiver along the roads as part of our hillside farming, and in some areas to stabilize slopes. So I will give a little insight in terms of why we chose some of the communities that we're working with, as well as a little bit on vetiver, the grass as a good green engineering tool. But before I go on, I just want to share really our realities. 3 days ago, I think around the 6th of November, we had a tropical storm or depression that actually damaged significantly the community that we are working with, and that is Petite Soufrière and Saint-Sauveur. And if you look at the picture on the right, this is a shot we took whilst we were preparing to install some of our vetiver along the slopes. And on the left is what is left of it after a few inches of rain on Sunday. So you could see a serious change in the landscape. And to give you a better idea of what happened, if you notice on the left-hand side, a landslide took pretty much part of the hillside, and it cut across two of the main roads going into the Petite Soufrière village, and that landslide went from the ridge all the way to the coast. So that exactly what the project that we're working on is trying to protect. This landslide is actually exacerbate that problem. Now, what is interesting on the right, if you notice a circle there, this is a vetiver installation that we did under the project, and I don't know if it's by divine intervention or the mere nature of what we are doing. If you notice,
sorry to cut you a bit, Mr. Coipel. If you could just space yourself just a little bit for the interpreters, please. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me? Is it better?
Yes.
Right. Okay. As I was saying, the picture on the right in the circle, this is an installation, a vetiver installation just below the house. And if you notice, the landslide did not disturb it too much. And we are hoping that it really tells the story of the importance of the use of vetiver on the slopes as a green engineering tool. I will now do a little bit just to give you a little background, or just to give you a little description of what we're speaking of in terms of vetiver. And we know that it is widely used in terms of soil erosion control, in some cases towards slope stabilization and soil and water management. We have various names. We in some countries, grass, vetiver, sweet root, I think in Grenada, in Dominica, from time to time, you hear people saying vetiver. It's a grass, and it's tropical and as well as subtropical plant, and it grows well in very sunny conditions. The important thing is the roots grows in some cases up to 10 feet deep, and because the type of grass, it suckers quite a bit, and that helps it to have greater mass, and that could trap as much as possible soil and to hold the soil or stabilize soils on sloping lands, especially where you have soils become very loose in some cases. It's also good to note, worth noting, that it has very powerful phytoremedial actions. That means it can treat contaminated soils. It is known to remove heavy metals and from certain soils.
Sorry to cut you. Some persons are saying that the slide is not moving, but I am seeing it moving. Is anybody having that challenge?
It's moving on our end.
Okay. So it is moving. I think just one person is having a bit of a problem that it's stuck. You might need to come in and go out and come back in. Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, Mr. Coipel.
No problem. Another important attribute that we can link with vetiver, it's a C4 plant, and basically it does not compete with other food crops, and we'll speak about that in a bit. And it's also known to absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and to fix it into the soil. Now, because of the nature of the root or root growth, in very quick time, it can grow, as we indicated earlier, it can grow as deep as 10 feet. And because of the nature, in terms of the fibrous nature of the root system, it holds the soil well. And as I indicated earlier, the plant grows into clumps, and this could trap soil, loose soil that may be eroded on those slopes. In some cases, it provides an opportunity to have this sort of footpaths because it traps the soil. So along the contour of the slopes, you can actually assist in developing those footpaths. And in this particular slide, we want to indicate the importance of how we can complement the use of this green engineering with the gray engineering. And the picture says it all. What you see here is the use of gabion baskets to help in terms of land stabilization, but along the slopes, you would see the clumps or the lines of vetiver grass growing along the contour. So it's really it's complement very well the gray engineering, and we wanted to make sure that people recognize that we're not only going to indicate the use of vetiver in certain areas, or vice versa, the use of only gray engineering. We would like to see more and more of the integration of the both engineering towards slope stabilization. I mentioned earlier that the vetiver grass is a non-invasive species, meaning that it will not be propagated by seeds or seed distribution, and therefore it can be controlled in an environment that it is established. So it's something that is an important factor that we have to note. And I think vetiver in itself grows very well in our tropical climates, and is very well suited for our certain conditions in most of these small territories within the region. I just want to touch a little bit on the whole installation, but it's important for us to start with the issue of not just going to harvest vetiver each and everywhere, but to really move into the mode of establishing vetiver nurseries. And the reason for that is what you don't want to encourage is people harvesting vetiver from areas that they would really install it to provide them with certain control, whether it's in terms of water, land stabilization, and so on. So what is encouraged is to really go about establishing vetiver nurseries. So we have established a nursery that will allow us to have plants or slips for use in whatever installation that we want to do. The nurseries that we tend to promote is nurseries where you plant the vetiver in rows, 3 feet between the rows, and maybe within a foot and a half along the rows. So that will allow you now to have sufficient material for installation wherever it is required. So that's just a few pictures to show a nursery that was established in Saint-Sauveur to support the installation of vetiver on these slopes and along the roads. Again, harvesting the slips are important because you need to start with good planting material if you want to have effective establishment. And you would see the gentleman preparing material. What's important to note, you want to remove excess roots. Normally you would encourage to keep the roots within 5 cm, trim the roots down to 5 cm, as well as the slips to about 4 inches, 10 cm in length. In most cases, it's encouraged to do pre-rooting. So that means you would be soaking the slips in water for about 3 to 5 days. And that will allow some roots to develop before you go ahead and establish. I also want to indicate that when you're harvesting, it's important to take certain precaution in removing the clumps. So you use a sharp tool. Some cases people may use a desuckering tool. But the important thing is to remove the clump, and then you can separate the slips from the clump, as well as to undertake the final preparation of trimming the roots and the stalks.
Mr. Coipel, before you continue again, just please again, thank you. Just a bit. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
All right, no problem.
Thank you.
All right. I'm moving right into the installation of vetiver, whether it's along the slopes or along the road. What is encouraged that you want a very good start when you're establishing the vetiver slips. And as such, it is important that we remove, in some case, the the brush or the ground cover where you intend to establish the vetiver strips. But important to note, you do not want to expose the soil. So you have to be, it's almost like strip cropping. So you want to remove or clear the area that you intend to establish the rows or the slips. And in some cases, you might do brushing. In some cases, you may use a shovel to remove the top vegetation where you intend to install the plants. And we also need to note that vetiver needs full sunlight. So therefore, in some cases, you may have to remove some of the plants that may shade the slips when they are established. When you're going to establish on a hillside, it is good to use an A-frame to ensure that you're establishing the strips along the contour. And as you can see in the pictures, the picture on the left-hand side, you see they're erecting or mounting the A-frame. And the other pictures depict the rows that have been established. You notice there also some level of terracing. So you may find the use of vetiver can also be combined with terracing, and that in itself will also hold the soil in place along the slopes. Just again, to just reiterate the aspect of establishing the slips. The slips are usually placed about 10 to 15 centimeters apart, and dependent on your measurement in terms of your degree of slope. In most cases, you'd find you planting at a distance between the rows can be anything between 3 feet to 10 or 15 feet, depending on the slope. However, what we encourage, and I'll speak a little bit about it later down, is when you're looking at the farming systems that are generally practiced. Like for instance, in Dominica, we normally do a lot of farming on the hillside. So we need to integrate the whole planting with that of where you're establishing your crops. So that in itself can be a factor when you determine the spacing between the rows. But for now, I want to focus specifically along the rows, where we suggest the establishment of the plants 10 to 15 centimeters. This picture really depicts the use of vetiver along the roadsides. The picture on my far right, on your far right on the screen, is a newly cut road. And what you see here is the establishment of the vetiver strips alongside the road, because if not, the soil you see there at the edge of the road will eventually erode away because it is loose soil. And what we have seen very successful is once you use the vetiver grass, it actually holds that soil in place and it prevents any further erosion, because as you can see, it's much loose soil being placed at the edge of the newly cut road. And that's what you would see in most cases when you establish the vetiver grass along our roadsides. As well as we have seen a good combination of vetiver grass and other shrubs like crotons, hibiscus, because we normally use those as in our own beautification of our roadsides. But what we see is important is to use the vetiver grass, which will provide the protection in terms of erosion and loss of soil. And obviously that will fit well in the landscape as it relates to the choice of material along the roadsides. It's important that you give the slips a very good start once you establish them, and it is suggested that in the first 3 weeks that you ensure that there is sufficient water for the plants. That's why it's advisable to really establish your hedgerows in the rainy season or in the onset of the rainy season, so it will give the plants a very early start, so it could be fully established by the end of the rainy season. In the case where you are planting the grass where very little rain, it's advisable to provide watering as well as to fertilize the plants so they could have some early establishment. I think I've covered a bit in terms of the site establishment, so I'll go quickly for this. Yeah, we have also seen the use of the vetiver system on commercial or residential areas. We did actually supported a slope on a residential, newly built residential area, and we again use the vetiver rows or hedge rows along the slopes that where there's some backfilling. And that again is to protect the further erosion or removal of that soil in that area. So we see it as a very effective tool in preventing land erosion, even in residential or commercial areas. When we're looking at our cropping systems, we recognize that soil moisture is important, and we have seen the use of the vetiver leaves as a good mulch, as well as a weed suppressant. So you can actually use some material from vetiver in terms of when you actually pruning the plants, you can use the leaves as a mulch. And this last slide that I want to show is very important, because we're not saying that, especially for the small communities where the farmers practice hillside farming, we're not saying that you need to establish the entire area where farmers cannot use their land for their livelihood, but we want to be able to integrate the use of vetiver within the small farming systems. So what we are doing here is to really demonstrate how farmers can utilize and integrate the use of vetiver into their farming systems. We're getting benefits from both their crops as well as a vetiver grass. So that's very, very important that when we promoting the use of vetiver, that it must be well integrated into the farming system or into the landscape that best suits the farm, if we want to promote the adoption as a green engineering tool on the small holdings. I think that's my last slide. So thank you. And I guess, Michaela, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Coipel. But before we take questions, we just have the second part on vetiver by Mr. Craig Thomas on using the vetiver to develop green businesses. And after that, we'll go into the questions. So Lavon, if you could just hold your question for a bit as we take Mr. Craig's presentation on further use of the vetiver. Thank you. All yours, Craig.
Michaela, you see my presentation?
Yes, I could see. You just need to go in full screen now.
I need to go to full screen.
Yes, right at the bottom. Voila.
Hold on.
The last one.
This one?
Yes, this one. Yes.
Not this. That one. All right.
Full screen. Hearing you clearly.
Full screen,
if you
everything.
could just, yes, full screen. If you could just pace yourself a bit for the interpreters to get a bit of a sufficient time to do the interpretation in French. All yours. Thank you. Go ahead, Craig.
Okay. All right. So good morning, everybody, and similar to my colleague Kent. Good afternoon to some of my colleagues who are on the other side of the big blue marble. And I also want to join with him by expressing thanks to IICA and ADEME for forging this relationship. And similar to what he said, Dominica is located between Martinique and Guadeloupe. Antigua, basically on a clear day, we can see Guadeloupe from where I live. I can see Guadeloupe clear as clear as just beside me. So I just want to say that I do hope that coming out of this session, we can forge forge our relationship more and develop more technical support for the Caribbean region. So the project, as my colleague Kent would have alluded to, it's basically looking at how we can develop the vetiver grass in the 4 Caribbean territories. And part of the project is the green business component. In Antigua and Barbuda, we just concluded a 3-week training session in terms of how we would develop the vetiver into a green business. I have in my hands, I have some soaps. As you can see from the photos, I have some soaps. I also have some crafts and I have wines, right? So all these are niche markets that have been developed in Antigua and Barbuda since the inception of the project. And on my screen, you can see some of the participants last night. That was actually last night after we concluded the training. Basically, the EBA project has to do with sustainable development. And as you can see, it encompasses different areas: climate change, socio-economic benefits, community-based adaptation, communal-based natural resource management type project, and integrated conservation resource. The one that we're looking at here is the socio-economic benefit and the community-based adaptation types of project. And we would have done some work in that area. My colleague Kent would have spoken about the vetiver grass, but for persons who don't know, the use when it comes to using it as a green business is either the leaf or the root. For persons who live in Antigua, we know this grass by the name bedding grass, right? I never knew the grass until this project. I must admit to that. And based on history, this grass cannot be found in Antigua in large quantities. So with the inception of this particular project, we are now bringing back this bedding grass to Antigua and Barbuda, making it available for persons to use and to develop green businesses. To date, based on the component under the green business, we would have trained over 17 persons, women and youth, and the areas that we looked at were wines, essential oils, crafts, soaps. Those are some of the areas that we would have developed in terms of those were areas of interest by the participants. Again, with this vetiver grass, we're now looking at the different niche green business that you can go into in Antigua and Barbuda. In Antigua and Barbuda, we are accustomed to using one particular or the same type of plants to do a particular job. And I think with the vetiver grass, we are now introducing something new where somebody can develop a business out of it. So the landscaping is an area where we basically think persons can develop using the vetiver grass. Guard Center, which is the beneficiary group under this project in Antigua and Barbuda, have started to sell plants to homeowners who are interested in landscaping to support their properties. Again, Kent would have alluded to the agriculture impact that vetiver grass has. And here in Antigua, especially at GAD, they have started to use the leaf. Now, the leaf now can be used as a mulch, which is a cultured practice. So instead of you using the plastic, you might not have the money to use the plastic for mulch. You can use the leaf for the vetiver grass, and that will help to reduce the soil, that will help to increase soil moisture and reduce the weeds. These are some of the products that have been developed in Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, Tobago, Dominica, using the vetiver grass. And as you can see, the essential oil is a huge market. There's a huge market for essential oil in the Caribbean. I know for a fact in Antigua and Barbuda, the essential oil is big in the tourism industry. And I think with the vetiver grass, which is new to what we're doing, we'll basically get some response from the tourism market. Participants would have learned how to make the vetiver grass oil. So we should be seeing some oil on the market in Antigua and Barbuda for the Christmas season. Again, these are some of the photos that were taken during a training that we did early in the year, where we used the leaf and the root to do some craft making. As you can see the process in terms of drying, harvesting the leaf, drying the leaf. Then we went into
Craig, are you there with us? I think you might be having some connection issues. Craig, we lost you there just for a little bit.
You're good again?
Yes,
good,
all
Michaela?
good. Yes, all good. Yes.
Right. So I was just saying that the idea behind of these training is for persons to develop their own niche so that they can basically develop their own and they can develop the entrepreneurial skill and go into their own different types of businesses. Again, you can use the root. The root now has a number of purposes, such as you can use it for insect repellent, the essential oils, used to produce wines, and also to produce vetiver grass soaps. And from the photos, you can see these are all products that have been made in Antigua. Most of them have been made during the last 3 weeks of the training. So again, this is a new thing, and we can basically help persons to get into their own business. Training, we did a number of training. We had 3 areas of training under this business, green development business component. We had a business development, a business proposal development writing area. We had a branding marketing, and we also had a product development. So those are photos from the product development training where we were teaching persons how to make the oils and also to make the soaps. And as you can see, most of the persons who attended the training are young women. Some of them are single mothers. And that is one of the benefits of having GAD Center here in Antigua and Barbuda, because they cater mostly for single women and they also cater for vulnerable youths. These are other businesses that have been developed using vetiver grass, not only in Antigua, but in Trinidad, Tobago, Haiti, St. Lucia. So these are some of the products that some of my colleagues would have shared with me that are happening around the region. And again, some of these projects would have been developed under this particular project. GAD, as I said, has started the sale of plants because Kent would have alluded to the green engineering, some of the issues that Dominica is having. Antigua doesn't have that topography such as Dominica, but we have some areas that have experienced and have suffered from flooding, similar to Dominica, and with the vetiver grass, using it on slope area can help to reduce the landslide. So GAD has started to plant seedlings, plantlets. They have already started to sell the leaves for the sale of mulch. And that is my business. Again, these are some photos of some of the participants and some of the products that they would have developed over a 3-week period. So thanks, Michaela.
Thank you very much, Craig. And I just want to say thanks to all our presenters, Laurenzo, Kent, and Craig. And it is one of the common things that we have seen between the 3 presentations are training and capacity building requirement to ensure that we implement these things correctly and in the right places. And as we can see today, we brought to you both our natural resources that are key in agriculture production, which is the water and the soil, and how we can use some of these green engineering solutions to protect it at minimum cost, and at the same time developing some form of business, because in everything we do, at least if we get in some kind of financial benefit out of it, that is excellent. And so before we take questions, I will send out a final poll while we go into the questions. And Lavon, I'm seeing you have a burning question, so you get to go first.
Yes, good morning again. I have two questions, one for Mr. Coipel and one for Mr. Thomas. The first one, Mr. Kent, can the vetiver grass be used as fodder for livestock? And Mr. Craig, I see you have the baskets the ladies made and all of that. I've seen in some other countries where the baskets are used in food in terms of as strainers and all that. How is the shelf life or longevity with regards to the vetiver baskets for use in food items or as food items like strainers for food and all that?
Mr. Coipel, you want to come in there, or you want me to go ahead on the feed?
No, it's okay. It's an important question. It's not, if you notice, animals usually shy away from vetiver for whatever reason. It's not something that we have information on as a fodder. What we probably can do is to get information on its nutritional content or its use, but it's not something that is used, at least not from my knowledge, that is used as part of feeding of livestock. And in most cases where they are planted, you find small stocks or even cattle would avoid them. So it's not a preferred choice for them in its natural, when they have to feed naturally on fields. But I think we can see whether or not there is any work done in using.
Yeah, I could probably come in there on the vetiver and use for livestock. It is not a very palatable feed. It is not very palatable as it's high in lignin, plus as you realize it is very thin and sharp, and also the nutrient level in the vetiver grass is not very high, and so naturally the livestock do not eat it, and as such it would not be recommended to feed them with it, as it's very high in lignin, not easily digestible, and it's definitely not palatable for the livestock. However, it is very good for use of mulching, keeping your water in your soil. We see I have Ingutu, hands is up. Sorry, before we take Ingutu, Kurt, if you could, Craig, if you could come in and answer the second part of the question.
Okay, so the second part of the question, again, for us in Antigua, it is new for us using it, but based on what I've read, in the Philippines, Haiti, for one, uses this plant a lot. So it's hard for me to give you a longevity in terms of how long these things will last. But based on what I've seen, yes, they have work and they have longevity, but I can't say for sure in Antigua because we haven't gone that much as a big, we're still experimenting with it. And I think in the coming years, we'll be able to get to that level, so I can answer that. So I don't know even persons I don't know if Brent is on or Nicalia, who is from that, who has been using the vetiver grass, countries who have been using the vetiver grass for a long period of time can maybe answer that question.
If I could be reminded of the question, please, sorry.
I wanted to know the food use longevity in terms of the food use of the baskets, like I've seen in like Sri Lanka, they would have these weave baskets and using it like rice strainers, coconut milk strainers. So I wanted to know the longevity the baskets have as it's
Well,
vetiver.
in terms of the food use there, that I'm not sure. I'm more accustomed with it as mats and baskets, and that I know for sure survives for a number of years. And so probably you would need to have a little bit of experience with it there, but
true.
Not particularly. I have not seen it really being used for mixing up with food in that sense. Yeah. But I believe it lasts long, even when you see it being used as a mulch out on the field and taking up a lot of the water, mixing up with the soil. And as I said, it has this very high lignin content, so it takes a long time to decompose. So I still feel that it will last for a bit. So we'll take Ingutu. You're welcome, Lavan. Ingutu.
Good morning to everyone. Just excuse my voice, I have a cold. My question is, how best can you grow vetiver grass to harvest very long roots? Because what I realize is when you dig it out, most of the time the roots remain in the ground. And I saw something like in Haiti, they use an excavator and that causes soil erosion. And the reason why we plant vetiver, one of the reasons is to prevent soil erosion. So I want to know, because I want those long roots. So how can I do that? Thank you.
Any of you want to take that, Coipel?
Okay, so I can speak to my experience. Last year, we planted a vetiver grass in June of last year. And when we harvested them in around November, I think we had grasses. Again, as she said, some would have been stuck in the soil. But when we harvested them, and that is not even 6 months, when we harvested them, we had plants with roots that are already over 2 feet. And that is not even 6 months. So we planted them in June, and by November, we had roots that were already like 2 feet long when we were doing some harvesting for the craft.
Okay,
so again, if we can do
so
some,
so what she's asking, how can she, go about digging it to get the full length and not necessarily, leading to any sort of erosion, because she wants well, in that sense, you would have to excavate, but in my opinion, I would feel that definitely do not excavate those that you would have on hillsides, on slopes, because once you excavate, you will disturb the structure of the soil, and even removing the roots will cause some problems with erosion.
Agreed.
Just to contribute, Kelly, there are two things there, and she raised two important points. Now, if you're going to establish vetiver for the purpose of the roots, because persons may be interested just in the roots of the vetiver, not necessarily in using the vetiver to stabilize land or to reduce erosion. I think if you're using your vetiver to protect your soil from erosion, certainly you will not encourage the person to harvest the vetiver, because you would obviously affect the whole intention. It will not serve the intention if you harvesting the vetiver by way of uprooting it with the roots and all. Now, in Craig's presentation, he indicated the use of the roots to extract the oils and so on. Now, if you're going to plant vetiver for that intended purpose, then the whole approach has to be different. You would have to plant it in a particular way that you can harvest it without, to harvest it first, not to damage the roots too much, to be able to get the roots intact. And obviously, I think that would require a different approach to cultivating the vetiver on the slopes for remedial work or for so one may want to encourage the use of different systems. Maybe one something that we want to try is the use of the drums to plant the vetiver into drums, or you would have certain troughs developed specifically to plant those vetiver to allow you to be able to harvest it and not disturb the root. At the same time, you can have repeated use of those trucks. So that is some of the things that maybe we need to examine, because you mentioned Haiti, or Haiti may have vast land, so they may plow an area just to plant the vetiver for use, for extraction or harvesting of the roots, and that is something that we probably have to look at. But in our case, we would not encourage people to harvest vetiver on the slopes for the roots purpose, because it's obviously going to affect the soil structure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Coipel. We will take La Monica, and after we'll take some of the questions from the chat. La Monica?
Good morning. My question is, I'm from the Bahamas, and of course we don't have the topography of the islands that you're mentioning, but we are prone to flooding, especially with the increase in seasonal storms. I was wondering what implication does vetiver have for controlling flooding? I think Mr. Thomas started to touch on it, but I wanted to know, is it applicable, or is it something that we can use to control flooding?
Craig or Coipel, either of you all wants to take this one? If any of you speaking, you're probably on mute.
Ken, take that one for me, please, Ken.
Well, I think it would have been nice if we had somebody from Tobago here on the call, because I think that is one of the things that you're using the vetiver. But we have, again, because of the nature of the grass, it can help to hold banks. I am not sure as to how effective it would be used in floodplains, because I do not have that experience in any of the sites that we utilize. But I know this is something they use to hold banks, to ensure that banks are kept firm in where the banks are used in itself to control flooding, and the vetiver itself is a good grass to hold banks. We also know that I have heard of the use of the grass in wet areas to control to absorb moisture. So this is something that we know from the literature it has been used, but in our case in Dominica, we have not experienced the use of vetiver in terms of flooding. So I don't know. I don't know if we have anybody from on the call.
I don't think we have any of them on, but we could always try to provide additional information. But one of the key functions of the vetiver, the fact that you have the deep roots, and especially for the flooding, what happens, and as somebody would have also mentioned in the chat, it will help in also, breaking down the flow and also limiting your sheet erosion, particularly on the flat plains. But in terms of actually, cutting down, and it can assist in the floods, but of course you would need to identify what is the main cause of that flood, and then see how you can incorporate the vetiver with drainage systems to assist with the flooding. So I hope that helps, and we will try to provide some added information on that there. So I will take some questions as we are winding down. We had some questions in French. How long does it take the vetiver to grow? You want to go ahead, Mariana? The two in French.
Voilà. Donc les questions sont donc
yes, so questions. How long does it take to grow vetiver? And also, is there a possibility to associate vetiver with any type of crop?
From the same person, if it's possible to associate vetiver with other culture.
Any of you want to take that question, Kent?
I think I didn't clearly hear the question.
How long? Okay, the first question is, Okay, how long does the vetiver take to grow, and can you associate it or incorporate it with other types of crop?
All right, I like the last part of it, so I'll start with that first. Certainly, it's a companion crop. It works well with other crops. As we indicated, that it doesn't compete for soil nutrients as much as other grasses, and therefore it is well suited. The only issue is when you are establishing or installing it, you do not want to allow the vetiver to be shaded too much, because it needs full sunlight in most cases for it to fully establish. However, it works very well with a range of crops, and it can be integrated nicely into a farming system. So I think it's a good companion crop with other crops, tree crops, shrubs, and even vegetables in some cases. It takes about 4 or 5 weeks for the plants to start to show good sign of growth. But the vetiver grass can be fully established within 6 months, within 4 to 6 months after establishment. What you find is the crop will continue to produce suckers as a clump. So the clumps continue to expand once it is established. So it can continue to grow long beyond the 4 to 6 month period. But it will, within a month, 2 months, you would start to see the crop establishing itself as a clump within that time frame.
Okay, so while I have you, Mr. Cooper, somebody wanted a refresher on what's the distance between rows. The distance you plan the vetiver between rows.
Okay, that's an important. I did not probably expound too much on it. Along the row, we suggest the planting with between 10 and 12 centimeters. Now, the between rows is determined on the nature of the slope of the land. Where you have slopes, very steep slopes, then the distance between the rows must be much closer, at least 3 feet, 2 feet, 4 feet in some cases. But when you have less of a slope and you want to allow some level of use of that land, then you're looking at the distance can go as far as 15 feet, in some cases 10 feet. But that again will be determined on the use of the land, what other crops you may have on the land, and the nature of the level of erosion activities on that particular slope. But we're encouraging not to plant obviously too close that you cannot use the land for other agricultural uses. And depending on the nature of the land, you may have gentle slopes and you may have very steep slopes. So on the steep slopes, you expect closer rows than on the more gentler slopes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Coipel. Mariana, we had another one in the chat in French. Was that one answered? Comment inciter les agriculteurs?
Et oui, comment inciter les agriculteurs à mettre en place?
How can we encourage farmers to adopt systems like vetiver cropping as part of their agricultural system? So Marie-Edith Vincent, who works on the transformer system in Guadeloupe, said something in the chat in that sense, but I think we could ask their input from Mr. Thomas and Mr. Coipel.
What was that, Marianne? Sorry.
The French question was how to encourage the agriculture to put on those systems like vetiver on their agriculture exploitation. So Marie-Edith answer for the project Transformer she follow in Guadeloupe. So I think we would like to listen to Kent or Craig answer.
Okay. Kent, you want to go ahead? Craig is a bit distracted now.
No problem. That's a very important question, and the CBF EBA project, its unique nature is really engagement of the community-based organizations in the implementation of the project. By virtue of this, what we have done is to involve them in the various activities as it relates to promoting the use of vetiver the establishment of demonstration sites, and to really again use build capacity among farm laborers, farmers, and as well as to assist them in the installation of the vetiver grass on their farm holding. So it's one that will have we have to continue the capacity building, the promotion. And interestingly, after the storm on Sunday, we had a testimony from a farmer who indicated how the grass actually protected his land and from the intense rain. So we do have some testimonies from farmers utilizing the grass. So I think it's continual promotion, continual involvement and engagement of the farmers and the community dwellers in the use of the grass. The other aspect of it is to promote the green business aspect, the value of the grass, whether it's in terms of the craft industry, whether it's in terms of the remedial work, mulching, and other use that the grass has, and that in itself can complement its use in terms of the land restoration or stabilization. So I think, in a nutshell, is the holistic use of the grass for various uses that in itself will make it an important item as an integrated item into the farming systems.
Okay, while I have you, someone wants to know the cost of a plant. I think we would have had something on that under the project, but that would vary, of course, with countries. If you could just give an idea of the cost per plant in Dominica, at least.
The cost range, traditionally, farmers used to sell the plants in clumps. And in any one clump, you can get up to 10 plants. And a clump could go as far as $1 US. And now we have from our nursery establishment, now we are selling slips, and the individual slips can be as close to 25 cents US or the about $1 EC in some cases. So the price can range from, let's just say, 25 cents US to $1 US, depending on the nature of the planting material.
Okay, great. As we are winding down, we did have some questions in the pre-registration, and someone in Suriname was quite keen on getting some information on the availability of vetiver in Suriname. And if Laurenzo from the IICA office, or if anybody in Suriname could just give a brief idea of whether this is a plant that is currently available in Suriname. And also how, it can be promoted in Suriname. Laurenzo, are you there with us still? Anybody from Suriname?
Yeah, still here. I've been looking for that plant also here in Suriname. I haven't seen it as yet, and it's something that we, as the office, could look at, especially planting these plants around the coastline of Suriname, where they have these artificial banks or dikes being built. That could be an option to protect the dikes as well.
Okay, thanks, Laurenzo. One of the key things under this project was, as Craig would have mentioned, there was not much vetiver in Antigua, and so what we had to do was to export some from Dominica, and I will just ask Greg to just, give a bit background on that before we close off.
Thank you very much, Nakilia. Are you hearing me clearly?
Yes, I could hear you clearly, Mr.
Wonderful. Yes, we did, and we had a very interesting experience where, as you mentioned, Antigua and Barbuda did not have a lot of vetiver. And so through the efforts of Kent in Dominica, they were able to, through the nursery for a farmer, produce slip. And we worked with both the plant health officials in Dominica and in Antigua and Barbuda to move the slips from Dominica to Antigua and Barbuda, and it is that movement of the slips, that allowed us to establish the nursery in Antigua and Barbuda. I think Craig can testify to the fact that we did have a very high survival rate. I don't know whether Craig might want to say a few words about that whole process.
Thanks, Greg. I think Craig is dealing with some urgent matters at the moment. And so in Suriname's case, there is the opportunity, if it does not exist there, to have it brought in and used for, you know, some of those management practices. And so these are some discussions we could have thereafter. So if we do not have any further, oh yes, there was one last question. What maintenance is required for vetiver, including nutrient requirement? I'll just start up with that, and if you could go on the nutrient part, Mr. Coipel. One of the key things with the vetiver, you need to cut it back. That means you need to cut the leaves every few months so that you can get fresh leaves, especially if you're using it for the green businesses, and also that helps stimulate your root growth. Mr. Coipel, if you want to add anything on the nutrient regime that was used with the vetiver in Dominica.
Yes, basically you'd have to know your soil nutrients status before you can add any fertilizers or so. However, in the normal case, you'd want to have a compound fertilizer, maybe 10-10-10, or one that will stimulate growth of the roots in the first instance, because what we're trying to encourage is good root establishment. So we normally encourage high phosphorus in some cases to help establish your plant's root system. And then obviously, as I indicated, that if you have a compound fertilizer, certainly you'll have good vegetative growth. So it depends. What we encourage is to really use the fertilizer in the very, very early instance. And obviously, once its plant is fully established, it will take care of itself, because it's not a heavy feeder on the nutrients of the soil.
Okay, thanks. We had another question there, Mr. Coipel, directed at you. You mentioned that the grass spreading by suckers. By my understanding, it's that the grass don't spread because it is a clump grass. Can you explain how it spreads a little more? I think there was a misunderstanding on the spread.
Okay, good. Well, what we're indicating that is not an invasive species, meaning that it doesn't propagate by seeds. And therefore, it will only grow at the point where it is established. So what we know is what you find at the base of the plant, it will send out suckers, it will form clumps. So you'll have suckers at the base of the plant, but it goes no further at the point of establishment. I think that's the important thing. Unlike other grasses that may, once they produce their seeds, they can be dispersed into other areas and grow in other areas that they may not be wanted. So it's in itself, it's not a problem for it to spread from area to area. It is only going to grow at the particular point it is planted, basically.
Okay, we have a few more questions coming in. Can the product development training become available online for us? And what is the vetiver oil used for? And Mariana, we have one last question in French.
Yeah, the last question in French is about if that plant is active against mosquitoes, insects in general.
If it can repel insects.
Yeah, repel, yeah.
Yeah. Coipel, you want to go? Craig, are you back with us?
I'm back with you, yeah.
Yes.
I think, Nicalia, based on what we would have done in Antigua, and I know Kent and Brent are currently doing something in the business development. I think that is something that IICA can explore with Ademe in terms of how we can put together a package to do it online, given that this business development training is being done in 4 countries. I think that can be done. It's just for us to have that conversation, Nicalia. And based on what I'm seeing, yes, I think people are using it for food in the Philippines and all that. We haven't done that as yet. We are just sticking to the wines and the essential oils.
Okay, so in terms of repelling the insects, yes, they do. The plant does repel insects. 2 of the key insects that it repels is the moth and the cockroaches. Yes,
Yeah,
and roaches.
Yeah, so the root person just put it in. You put it in bags like these. Let me see if I can show you.
Your video is off.
Yeah, people put them in bags like these, or maybe in little sacks, and you just hang them among your clothes, and it helps to keep away the moth. So persons have been doing it, and based on feedback, it has been working, and it also gives off an aroma also.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to everybody for all your questions. But
I asked one question. If I
yes,
may,
we'll take you
about
as the
how
final
well does it
question,
survive?
Leon.
How well would this grass survive in a low-lying area where the water moves in a flood flow? Like maybe in an area, especially like a place in Antigua, where that is dry. If it was planted in a place where the water would run in a flood time, would it die easily when the water settles a little bit? How long will it live in water?
No. Based on what my experience with it, Leon, because we would have planted it down at the old Cooks landfill. And what I observed is that once they are established, the first thing is getting them established. Once they're established, they basically can go in any conditions, whether harsh condition in terms of drought and in waterlogged area, but they have to be established first. So my advice to anybody who's doing it is, when you're going to establish them, make sure that the root is established and make sure they have some sort of irrigation on them. But once they are fully established and you have a drought or you have flooding, they will stand up to it, based on what I've observed, especially down at Cooks. But the initial stage is very, very tedious. The initial planning is very tedious, and it comes down to having a good root system. Once they have a good root system, they establish very, very fast. And water. But after that, they basically adapt to the situation very, very easily.
Okay, thank you very much for those responses. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for staying with us till the end. And so now I will ask our ECS, the Eastern Caribbean State Representative, Mr. Greg Rawlins, to give us some short closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Nicalia. And once again, good day to all of you who have joined us for this webinar. I first want to recognize Mr. Jerome Rush, the Regional Director of ADEM Guadeloupe, and the other members of the ADEM team, my IICA colleagues, and the participants who have joined us for today's webinar. Let me first of all say, indeed, it's been a pleasure for IICA to be able to partner with ADEM in the hosting of this interesting webinar on tools for resilient agriculture in the Caribbean. We at IICA welcome the opportunity to collaborate with our partners at ADEM Guadeloupe to host this webinar, which provided a platform for the sharing of experiences on climate smart irrigation technologies in Suriname and the use of vetiver grass as an ecosystem adaptation and green engineering solution in Antigua and Barbuda and Dominica. This webinar, as Mr. Rush would have indicated at the outset, gives life to the Memorandum of Understanding between IICA and ADEM, which was signed in late 2020, and which serves as a framework for the two institutions to work together to develop capacities for climate change adaptation in the agricultural sector in the Caribbean. We at IICA see this as the first of many collaborative activities between IICA and ADEM. I wish to take this opportunity to, on behalf of IICA, to thank the regional director and the entire team at ADEM for their willingness to collaborate with IICA in hosting this webinar. I also wish to thank my IICA colleagues, Laurenzo, Craig, and Kent, for the excellent presentations today, and to recognize in particular and thank Ms. Marie-Edith Vincent and Mr. Kilia Gregor Karai, who served as focal points at ADEM and IICA respectively for this activity. I do hope that you, the participants, all found the information presented today to be both informative and useful. And we encourage you to share the information with your colleagues and friends who may have an interest in these topics. It is only through the sharing of the information and the adoption of the practices and tools on the ground that we will be able to build a truly resilient agriculture in the Caribbean. Once again, I thank you all for your participation, and we look forward to engaging you in similar activities in the future. Thank you very much. Back to you, Nakia.
Okay, thank you so much. And if anybody else, before we close, want to just give some last thoughts, some last comments, this is more than welcomed. Okay, so with that, I say thank you very much. It has been indeed a great pleasure for our first collaborative work with ADIM and the French territories, and we do look forward to future events. Thank you, and I do wish everybody a lovely afternoon.